You're listening to Consolidate That. Ukraine is my motherland. It is now under a savage attack by Russia. Ukraine is shielding Europe and the rest of the civilized world from Putin's barbaric aggression. Ukrainians are brave and effectively fighting back. Let's help. Make a donation to Armed Forces of Ukraine. Link is in the show notes. Hashtag Stand with Ukraine.
Welcome back to Consolidate That. We've got a very special guest, Ivan, and myself, just the two of us. A classic
Just two
episode,
special people.
just two special people doing a classic episode. No guests today, just pure brain power of Ivan and Ryan. So, what we want to talk about today was a few of the things that are happening in the shifting market and the things that the sellers of practices should be thinking about and looking at as they're thinking about entering selling their practice and what the different ideas that people should be considering. So Ivan, what's the first thing that you think people should think about when they're trying to decide if they need to leave their practice?
Well, let's dissect a little bit what's going on in the market, because what we're seeing is definitely a radical shift from the last sort of gradual growth of our industry for both multiples on the platform as well as multiple on the clinics. As everybody knows, it's been, we've seen crazy numbers. We've seen 18 multiple, 19, we've seen 23 multiple of EBITDA on this single practice acquisition. That's gone. So everybody who is was excited to sell in this sort of consolidation frenzy and get that multiple from the sellers, that's not available anymore. And with what's happening with the market because of the Russians that did this to economy and everything else that's going on, so the multiples are dropping, the interest rates are higher, and the consolidators that leveraged a lot of their acquisitions through debt. The debt is becoming really expensive, and those that were leveraged a lot, then they are in a lot of trouble right now. So therefore, right now, the interest in selling your practice, it just can't be the immediate reward economic only. I think there's many more things that are now coming into decision, and they're becoming more reasonable. I think the multiples that we're seeing, and Ryan, you're closer to the pipeline, but they're in around 10. I know that in
Mhm.
Canada they're even like 6, 7, 8, and there's nothing that really will stop them from dropping even lower. So I think that's an important beginning of the conversation, that the environment, the macros of the economic situation changed. The industry is still stable. It's very attractive to investors. It will go through a recession like before with good numbers as the industry, but this arbitrage game is not there anymore. And the focus is way more on the organic growth and the platforms that know how to operate clinics. With that in mind, let's now think of what changing in the conversation with the sellers, right? And that's what you're closer to.
Yeah.
So what are those questions that you think that, well, what do you ask the sellers when you talk to them in the last sort of several months?
Well, the first thing that's interesting is a lot of times you don't have to ask a question because people want to tell you what's going on in their practice. So when we kick off our first meetings with sellers or even practice owners, right? You're not a seller until you really find the right partner and are doing that. But even if you're just researching what's going on in the industry and who you want to talk to, I talk to a lot of people that are just doing that. And I think there's a few reasons for selling. Like you said, first off, there was a major push by a lot of people that saw outrageous figures and said, there's an opportunity here to sell my practice and retire and go sip pina coladas on the beach and never think about veterinary medicine again. And I think that side of the world has changed. Practices are still extremely valuable though, and a very good investment and a great place to have your money, and you've grown a great business. But now I'm starting to see people that are nearing their retirement age. Um, if you're a smaller practice, one or two doctor practice, you're probably seen and have heard the stories of, the 75, 85, 90-year-old doctor who finally shows up to work one day and says, I think today's going to be my last day. I'm ready to sell the practice. And at that point, you no longer have a practice because you don't have a doctor there. So people that are 5 years, 6 years, 10 years out from retirement are starting to look at what the exit opportunity is to be able to sell a practice while still participating and staying long on alongside. So that's a big one. And then there's a major heavy piece of actually, owning a business. Having your own business is stressful and it's trying. And I think a lot of the practice owners that I talk to tell me that they're ready to go back to the thing that they're passionate about, which is practicing medicine, and stop worrying about HR and time off policies and benefits and those sort of things. So those are some of the big things that I think I'm seeing from practice owners that I'm talking to right now.
So what is the reaction that you hear from so right now, right now is the time, last 2 months, and right now is when, you have these sellers coming in and they're like, yeah, I want 15, 17 multiple. What do you see as the reaction to basically them slowly understanding that they missed the boat of those crazy lottery money? And what is their strategy then to do it? Because I assume there's different people with different goals. So those that are sort of closer to what our partners are, 45, 55-year-old entrepreneurial person. And then there's those that are, a little closer to 60. They're thinking, I might retire. And oh, it's not happening. So what is their reaction, and what is their then outcome? Like, how would those different classes of people, if you can classify them that way,
Yeah.
what would they
Yeah.
do?
So your first batch of practice owners are what I think are folks that are still in a fantastic spot. People that are excited about veterinary medicine, excited about the growth of the industry, the fact that it was COVID immune, and it was very, very strong through previous recessions, and it's going to continue to be strong through this recession. And I think the folks that are looking at that and saying, "Hey, I can join up with a group that is looking at a long-term growth strategy versus arbitrage, which we've talked about in a couple episodes, but the idea of buying things, bundling them together and selling them to the next person that gets stuck holding the bag eventually. But when you're finding practice owners that are looking for a group that has a long-term strategy to be able to grow and improve the practices, those folks are still in a great spot because they're looking at what we can offer and what some others are offering around margin expansion and improving the efficiency and the operations of the practice and utilizing the scale of the business to be able to do some big things. Um, the people that were sitting there and thinking, well, if numbers continue to go up, they'll continue to go up forever. Probably like the Bitcoin crowd, right? they're probably saying, well, this isn't something I can do. But what you can see with, obviously we're Galaxy vets. We think that we have the best model, and I think that we do. Um, but people that look at that
Softball.
and can people that can look at that and say that there's an opportunity to do an equity rollover. So looking at the value of your practice, but being able to participate with somebody else like ourselves that are going to be able to take a major portion of your equity in your practice and roll that into a parent company like Galaxy Vets with a team that's going to be growing that long-term wealth and value of the business. So you don't need to just be selling everything that you own right now. You can also reinvest that into an industry that you know a lot about, that you feel confident in, and that you feel you still have the opportunity to be able to influence and push the value of your practice continually.
Well, I kind of, with all this happening in the market right now, I actually feel like we are lucky in the way that our initial promise was, let's value your practice less than these crazy numbers because that's not sustainable. But let's roll over a major portion of your sale, have your mini liquidity event, especially if you're younger and continuing to work, whatever you need to do, buy a car, new house, and a boat, and then continue to work with us on this project where we will maximize the next exit, whether it's IPO or strategic, or we just continue as an ESOP based organization. And 5 years later, see the overall platform multiple grow much more significantly of this than this individual hospital. And even now I'm looking at these people that are even retiring, that even for them, if I retire today, sell my practice, and at 10x multiple, it's $2 million. Well, that's not going to really cut, to the for the whole retirement. But if part of it or half of it goes into the company that you believe in that can grow organically, then why would you put it in the bank? Like, why would you liquidate your asset and then put it in the bank where it's, maximum 4% growth over the long period of time, where if there's success in Galaxy and how we see it, there's potential 7 to 10 fold of your investment. So I think that we were sort of lucky that we were thinking in this direction already, even before the market change. But one thing that I wanted to go back to, there's an interesting thing that you said, then pick the platform, pick the consolidator that is focused on operations rather than on the arbitrage. So what would be that conversation that you think that the seller should have to identify, yes, these guys are talking truth. They're going to build this operationally. Because I've seen, through VIS days, we've seen with you many presentations in which there's
Yeah.
one slide. How are you going to improve? We're going to deploy this most modern technology. What the hell that means? And things like
Yeah.
that. Like so what are the questions that these guys should, and women should ask for from the consolidator to actually understand that they're a true operational model that will have organic growth?
Yeah. I think, a lot of it starts with the first person that you talk to, which is someone like myself in business development. If I can't tell you efficiently the things that we're going to be doing around operations, then it's probably not very well baked out at the top level as well, because
Mhm.
those are things that need to be a constant conversation. So I think it's really important to grill. I like when people grill me with questions because I think it gives us the opportunity to show off what we've actually done and what we know and what we're going to do. So I think it's important to grill that first BD person. And if they're not getting you the answers that you look for, ask to talk to the next person. Who's the person that's going to be making these changes? So we had Steve, who's our VP of operations, on the podcast, say, hey, I want to talk to Steve. I want to know how Steve in person is going to make these changes. So I think that's a big thing, because people, if they don't have those fully baked, you're going to start to hear a lot of we could dream of, or maybe we will, or perhaps we should, or versus we have 19 growth levers that we can implement. Not all practices are going to be that. These are the things that we think would make the most sense, knowing what we know about your practice so far, but we can dive deeper in and figure them out. And so those are kind of things that are going to be important, because especially if you're doing an equity rollover, or retaining any shares
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
that group, you aren't going to be seeing those 2 to 3 year recapitalization cycles that you saw previously for
Not
people that
anymore.
sold practice and moved on with another, you know double the return, in a very short period. So I think that's going to be important, and it kind of carries over into the exit options as well. The exit options that people look at are not just who's going to give me the most money and what's my required contract to stay. That's one of those questions that I understand it. It kind of drives me a little crazy because, when I first started working with Galaxy Vets and VIS with Ivan, I didn't say, how long do you have to have me here before I can leave, right? That's We're
Actually never
going into
thought
a
about it. Yeah, you never hire people and like they ask you, how long do I have to be
how
here?
long do I have to be here? Right? It's like going to Everyone just went to Thanksgiving, right? If you walked into Thanksgiving and said to your mom, "Mom, I'm really glad that you invited me. How long do I have to be here?" Do you think that she's going to be really excited to be pulling the turkey out of the oven? No. You want to be there. It should be if you're not enjoying Thanksgiving with your family, go somewhere else. But right, if you're not enjoying working with us, you should find a partner that you want to be working with, and that's kind of how we would look at it. So I think you should look at your exit options. One of, where do you want to spend your time if you're planning to continue working? If you're looking to retire, what's the opportunity? Certain groups are okay with that, certain groups aren't. We're flexible depending on who the practice is, where they are. But those are the questions to ask. And an exit option that a lot of people bring up to me once they learn about our employee ownership is they say, I wish I could sell my practice to my employees so that I didn't have to deal with corporate medicine. I don't want to deal with a big corporate group. I wish I could just give it to my employees. but that doesn't make financial sense because they can't afford to buy it. It's not the right thing. So
Or they can't
that's where
run
we
it. That's another thing. They can't.
they can't run it as well. Yeah, because a lot of them will look at it and say, "I asked my associates if they want to buy it, and they don't." So that's where I think we can come in and allow people to have an exit option where their employees and their team can become equity shareholders in the entire organization that they're at. So they're able to fulfill that altruistic feeling. They're still able to receive the correct financial amount that they need for their practice, and they're able to set up a long-term growth strategy with the group that they can feel confident
That's awesome, and you remind me of a friend of mine that I had, in Ontario with the Thanksgiving. They weren't asking when can I leave, but when you visited them, they had a huge sign that this party is over at 7 p.m. They said it outright. I think it's smart. It's like you always have people that are gonna, finish all their beers or something and sit there until 10 p.m. and you're like, come on, guys. So I thought it was funny, but kind of effective.
Should I do that from now on? I'll practice. Hey, I'm happy to have you, but I only want to see you for 10 years. And then, you know,
Yeah, exactly. We can tolerate you for only 3 years, so that's
yeah, I think that's probably what the people tell me, right? They
right.
go,
Exactly.
Ryan, we're happy to have you, but for 5 years. And then
Yeah.
it
Well, let's
brings,
reverse this, Ryan. I love what you said there. So this is how we should look for it. And just to recap, so when you're talking to consolidator today in today market, you need to clearly understand what they do. Not just like, oh, we're gonna bring technology, we're gonna improve margins, and we're gonna improve revenue. Like what exact we're gonna improve marketing. What do you do? Like that's what you need to ask. And given my numbers and my practice at a high level that I told you, what do you think will fit to improve profitability or revenue or efficiency in my practice? How do you apply it exactly to my situation? Because not everybody is the same. So those are all the great questions to ask. But let's reverse it on our side. So now when we're talking to sellers, what do you ask them? What do you want to know about them, and what they should be prepared to answer in the similar way to you, so we are attracted to partner with them? Because we don't partner with everybody who has a pulse. We partner with people that are sold into our operational plan that we have clearly defined in our culture, in our burnout prevention culture, and then into our employee ownership. So what do sellers need to be able to answer to you?
yeah. So I think, you know, for me, two red flags for the right partner are when we open the conversation, they say, "What's your multiple and how long do I have to stay?" Right? If that's how we open our conversation, usually it
You can
means
leave
that we're
now.
not it's not usually a right cultural fit because we do want people that want to see a long-term growth with us. So that's one thing that's really important. But on the more intangibles, but or on the more non-financial side of things, I like to find out sort of what the culture of the team is, the longevity of the staff, what the ownership experience has been like for the staff thus far. I think it's really important to find out who their clientele are, if they're getting a lot of repeat clientele, if they're seeing a really good increase of growth in their practice, whether they've moved to a new spot, whether they've been able to drive new marketing or pushing new clientele in the in with them, or if they have a really strong base of existing clientele. Another thing that's important is as we look at sort of what their capacity is. If they're a smaller practice, is there space to add an additional doctor? Is there square footage? Is there exam rooms to add additional doctor? I know there's the patience to be able to add an additional doctor, but is there the actual capacity within the practice to be able to do that? So we look at the square footage of the practice. We look at the number of exam rooms. And then another big thing for us is also in our galaxy utilization of our solar systems, which is something we've talked about, but the regional focus. So really seeing where a practice is located and if it's in a spot where we've been able to, target and find other practices that are interested as well as other talent and other employees that are interested. So those are some of the things that we look at there. And I hate to give it too much of touchy feely, emotional side of thing, but there is a big emotional piece to it. There's some practice owners that probably leave a conversation with me and go, I don't ever want to talk to him again. Or and it might be mutual, or there might be some where we both leave and say, you know what, there's something special in the way that we both view the industry and the goals of the practice and those sort of things. And those are the things that I think it's my job to bring to our team, our executive team, and our review team, to be able to say there's something extra here, and now let's look at what the numbers look like. But those are the big things that I really look for and that matter a lot to me.
So you're not leading the conversation. I heard like this. I don't remember you and I think we talked to someone with that the BD person came in and they start conversation with you're about to get rich like that.
Oh yeah.
it's, I mean that's cool,
Yeah.
but I just don't know if that's really someone that like to me just that doesn't sound something that vets want to hear, or at least not all the vets. I mean, that's
Yeah.
wonderful
And they're
thing to hear, but it's like if you're leading with that, that to me is like a
right.
little cheap.
You know, we've talked a lot about the Maslow hierarchy, and my wife and I, as we were driving to Austin for Thanksgiving, we were talking about this. And sometimes we have those conversations where your mind just is like, oh my gosh, this is too much. But we were driving down I-35, and if you've made that drive, there's plenty of places to spend money and lots of consumerism. And you're in a large vehicle, and there's screen, and you're like, what are we doing all this for? What's the point? What's the goal of what we're doing? We had our babies in the back, and we're like, we are excited to go down and see family and have the babies meet people and play and things like that. It doesn't matter, at a certain point, it doesn't matter what car you're driving in to get there. As long as it's safe, as long as it's something you feel comfortable in, and where's the house, where are we staying? There were those sort of things that only to a certain point did those really matter and make a difference. But at the end of the day, it was about being excited about what you were doing, getting up, wanting to make sure that, when we got there, I could respond to some emails because I was excited about practice owners that we were talking to. And I think that's the big difference. There's plenty of wealth that's being made in the veterinary industry right now. And I think successful practice owners are going to be able to extract that from their business in many different ways. But I think it's about wanting to enjoy that time that you're spending every single day as you get to that point.
I love that you went a little philosophical there because if you hate being a vet now, and at a certain point in my career, I hated being a vet, and then you're selling your practice, but you need to, how long do I have to stay there? If you're in that mindset and you're like, all right, I'll handle 2, 3 years with these guys, like you're gonna hate your life more for the next 3 years.
Mhm.
If you're not excited about the vision of the consolidator that you're partnering with, or the group, or the whatever they call themselves, at the end of the day, it's it needs to be something that has intrinsic motivation. Money is extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is you love it because you love doing it, not what the result is. And I think that that's what everybody should be looking forward. And when they're talking to potential exit strategy which fits the financial model that they design with their wealth managers, and that fits the long-term effect of potentially recapitalization, then also they need to feel like I want to be doing this with this group for the next 5 years, so we all together will get that second bite of the apple. So
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
cool. Well,
I,
let's wrap up with that. I think that was a great conversation, Ryan. Thank you for giving me more insight on what's happening when you're talking to the clinic owners, and hopefully, listeners got more out of it too.
yeah, this was awesome
Yep.
and always enjoy it. And so next week we'll have a part 2 of this episode, and really appreciate getting together with you.
Thanks, Ryan. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to Consolidate That. If you want to hear our new episodes, please find us on any podcast platform. Also, you can learn more about us on our website at galaxyvets.com.